What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Celtics Daily with me, Mike Zakarian. We're going to be diving into some more trade packages since that seemed to set the comments on fire over the last couple of days. People don't seem to be super thrilled about some of the things we're throwing out there. And just imagine how Brad Stevens feels because none of these deals feel too enticing as the Celtics try to figure out how to balance their roster budget as they are $200+ million just into the luxury tax if this whole roster came back next season. So I went back into the lab again using Spotrac and the trade machine to try to find some other places, some other packages that might make you feel a little bit better. But breaking news, it probably won't. But do me a favor, before we dive into some of these trade deals, just hit the little subscribe button. You know what I'm saying? Come along for the journey, hit the notification bell so that way you know the next time I throw out some trade packages you probably won't like. But let's get started. We did a smorgasbord, if you will, of different types of deals. We've included different players on the Celtics roster, some that I definitely don't like, some that are win now, some that are focusing a little bit more on winning later when Jason Tatum comes back from injury. But I got to tell you, the internet seems to be 50-50 on this Tatum recovery. There are a lot of Twitter doctors out there that believe Tatum is going to be back around the All-Star break. I don't know what hopium you've been drinking, but feel free, pass that around. Would love a little sip of that so I could have that sort of enjoyment and belief in myself and in Jason Tatum that some of the people out there have, because typically these injuries take a full-on year to recover from, and I know people are really like grinding the tape to figure out the timeline of when Tatum actually had the surgery after the injury. But man, the All-Star break would be really, really soon. But if somehow that is the case and Tatum is brought back that early, that really does change the outlook for the Celtics upcoming season. So you kind of have to have one of two minds of this, right? If you think Tatum's back, I mean, you could just straight up compete. We've spent so much time talking about how bad the Eastern Conference is going to be this year. Like, people are trying to talk themselves into the 76ers. Not me, but some people are out there doing that. And if you think Tatum's really coming back by February and you can just kind of stay afloat until that happens, then I mean, the Celtics can still compete. I think I'm still of the mindset where there's no need to rush him back. I mean, if it's just a 1 year reset, like there are some ways to just kind of go, light tanking. You know what I'm saying? Make Danny Ainge feel a little bit happy just with a dash of tank, and then get a really solid draft pick in the 2028 draft. And then all of a sudden the core's back ready to go. So I don't know. We'll see how they play it out. I think that's very optimistic to say Tatum's going to be back in February, but I don't know. The Twitter doctors are out there. Maybe the YouTube doctors will jump in and let me know. But let's get started. Let's do a little We the North. This one's going to involve Jrue Holiday. Sending Jrue Holiday up to Toronto and sending RJ Barrett back down. Now, I don't know if people love RJ. We don't have a lot of lefties on the team that would really spice things up to get a left-hander out there. The one thing that I like about RJ is if the Celtics are still trying to put out a competitive product this coming season without fully blowing it up, RJ saves you about $11 million by bringing him on. So that's not like crazy money, but his contract's also not as expensive going forward, and it's not as long of a deal. I also like RJ Barrett's game. I thought like some of the work that he did in Toronto last season before the higher ups in the Raptors organization were like, hey, can you guys stop winning games? And RJ stopped playing as much. But I did think RJ showed a little bit of upside. Now, Jrue, I don't really know what Toronto wants to do, right? Because one of the moves they made like around the trade deadline last season was taking on Brandon Ingram and extending him in his contract, right? So that would still give him Ingram, Emmanuel Quickly, Scotty Barnes, but then it gives him an actual like defensive presence guard. And Toronto is lacking so much shooting that I do think Jrue could actually make sense there. And I think Toronto's okay taking on a little bit more salary. RJ, on the other hand, I do think he kind of makes sense with the Celtics. He's like a bigger two guard, maybe a smaller three, a decent defender, a high-level scorer, can also rebound really well, which is going to be something that the Celtics are going to need moving into next season, again, with no Tatum and really no clue what type of big man we're going to have there. So I like the idea of bringing on somebody like RJ. Again, this isn't a super sexy move, but it's a move that allows you to continue to compete. And truly, I can't get underneath the Toronto Raptors hood. I don't know if they would be that excited in Jrue Holiday, but the thing that they are missing badly right now is defense from their guards, because right now it's Emmanuel Quickly and Grady Dick. And I mean, you can just do the eye test. None of those guys are defending that at a high level. And then for 3-point shooting, they literally have nobody. It's Grady Dick again, and that's it. Like, IQ's not really a 3-point shooter. So I think if they were trying to compete, Toronto does not like to be an organization that tanks. If they are trying to be a little bit better, and especially like we said at the top with the East being so bad, one or two tweaks and all of a sudden Toronto is like a 6 seed, especially if the Celtics are taking a step back. But I don't think this would happen, but I kind of like that type of deal for the Celtics where they, maybe they get a little bit younger, a little bit cheaper, without like just sacrificing talent, right? Without sacrificing talent. Speaking of sacrificing talent, that's what this next one's going to look like, all right? And just before everybody gets mad and pissed off, I don't want to do this, okay? But because we spent so much time sending Kristaps Porzingis somewhere else in a video, Jrue Holiday somewhere else, yesterday we spent time spending Jaylen Brown somewhere else, Derrick White, how do you feel about going somewhere else? What if we sent Derrick White to the Philadelphia 76ers? 76ers are in this weird spot, right? Nick Nurse and Daryl Morey, they are already on the hot seat before the season even started. A lot of people were speculating that after this past season, they were going to get fired. After they made all of those moves, they were on the cover of like SI and ESPN being like, here comes the new big three, Joel Embiid, Paul George, and Tyrese Maxey. They played a combined like 22 games together or something like that. If you send Derrick White over to Boston, we'd have to take some contracts back, some expiring, some have like one other deal, but it would also give us the number 3 overall pick. People seem to be really excited about the top 3 picks. I like the idea of getting number 3. So this would go White, and then probably like another throw-in pick, all right? Another throw-in pick would have to go over to Philly for the number 3 pick, plus Oubre and Drummond. You don't want either Oubre and Drummond. I mean, Oubre's a fine player. Drummond, you're not really interested in. This is just to make the salaries work after moving Derrick White. But it gets you way under the cap because both Oubre and Drummond's deals are about to fall off. They each have like 1 year left, respectively. It also gives you the number 3 pick, which you could in turn package that, get together and go do something else, or you just like draft that 3rd pick and now all of a sudden you inject some young talent into the squad, which, who knows what that's going to look like based on what the Spurs do ahead of them. Again, I don't really love this because I'm a big fan of Derrick White. It doesn't solve all of the cap problems. Assuming this deal happens, you're still moving off of one of Jrue Holiday or Kristaps Porzingis, but this does all of a sudden inject a ton of talent. I'd be curious how other people feel about this. Like, I am super high on Derrick White. I think he's one of the most talented, or like just one of the more talented glue guys that are out there, where he can do a little bit of everything, can run the offense, can knock down the 3, can play a defense. He had the most blocks in the entire league from the guard position this past year. So I don't know. I would rather not do that. But if you are like able to acquire the 3rd pick and then you're moving Jrue or KP, maybe it gives you a little bit more cap flexibility. And again, that would be more of a 1 year reset by doing a move like that. I don't want to do that. I want to keep Derrick White. I want to make that super clear. Keep Derrick White. But throwing it out there. Let's see. I mentioned Danny Ainge at the top of the show. What if Danny Ainge pulled a Kevin McHale? You might be asking, what are you talking about, Zakarian? Well, Kevin McHale was the general manager for the Minnesota Timberwolves when he sent Kevin Garnett to the Celtics. It was a nice little gift, a nice little pat on the head. Remember when? What if Danny does that for us and he helps us out a little bit by taking on some Kristaps Porzingis? All right, so I'm going to give you 2 different deals, okay? 2 different deals. Now, one of them is just Porzingis for John Collins. All right, or even Jrue Holiday for John Collins. Both of those kind of work, right? Jrue Holiday probably a more appealing one to get off of because of the length of that contract. Kristaps Porzingis only having 1 more year and being white would be a much nicer fit for Utah, so I could see them being interested. I also really do like the idea of the Celtics getting John Collins. Again, they're going to be thinned out in that 4-5 position with no Tatum, and then again, if Porzingis goes or like one of Luke or Al go, that's going to be an issue. So I do like the idea of John Collins, and he only has, I believe, 1 more year on his deal, and he makes in like the high 20s, so you'd have to figure out how you want to extend him. But honestly, I don't think John Collins' value has been super, super high since he left Atlanta. Even when he was at Atlanta, his value wasn't super high. So I feel like you could get somewhat of a deal on him. But let me give you one more, Danny boy. What if they took Jrue and Kristaps Porzingis? So we just packaged up that $60 million a year and went, take that. The Porzingis deal, that falls off after next year, so it's not the end of the world. Porzingis is a little bit longer, but we'd probably have to throw in another later first round pick. If they're going to do this, if they're going to take on both Jrue and KP, throw in like a 2031 first or a 2030 first where we think the Celtics are still competing. So it's a late first round pick. You could even make it a swap if you want, but it gives Utah another asset so they're willing to take on this money. Now, the Celtics are going to have to take some salary back, but a lot of that salary is going to fall off. In this scenario, they're still getting John Collins, and then you have to throw in somebody like Colin Sexton, and then a Bryce Sensabaugh. Bryce Sensabaugh, probably not a name you know. And honestly, I'm embarrassed that I know it. Why am I paying attention to tanking Utah Jazz teams? That is something I have to ask myself and my wife. But Bryce Sensabaugh, I feel like is a nice little cheap piece that you can throw in there. Collins and Sexton can both play now, so this is an opportunity to still compete. I'm not like super high on Colin Sexton, but again, to make the money work, it's important. And Utah's got a plethora of guards. They need to move off of one of these dudes. They have Jordan Clarkson still there, Colin Sexton. They drafted Keontae George, and then the rookie that had a solid year last year, Isaiah Collier. They got to move off of one of Sexton and Clarkson. Honestly, Danny should have done that last year. I'm not sure why they keep holding on to him, but in this scenario, it gets them a little bit older. They get another asset in a pick. This is on the Utah side of things, and then it makes them a little bit more competitive, right? We know they're drafting number 5th overall, I think, this year. They'll still have Lowry, Markkanen, and then I mentioned the backcourt of Keontae and Collier. They also have Kyle Filipowski, who's coming off a really solid rookie campaign too. So again, I'm not sure Utah would be super thrilled to do this. I don't think anybody is like, starting a parade in Government Center because we brought back John Collins, Bryce Sensabaugh, and Colin Sexton. But again, it makes it cheaper and then allows us to still compete with that squad. The last one's not as fun too. This one's been reported a couple of times, some sort of version of this, and this is the Charlotte Hornets helping us out a little bit. And Jrue gets to get reunited with a former assistant coach, Charles Lee. It puts some veteran presence and leadership into that locker room that so desperately needs it, because right now Charlotte is relying on Grant. I'm gonna make them both Williams as leadership, and I'm not sure that's exactly what they're looking for. And I don't really know what Charlotte's going to do. There's like rumors, this is not the deal we're talking about, but there's rumors that Charlotte's open to moving off of LaMelo Ball, which would really kind of snow globe shake up that organization. This does not include LaMelo. This is more of a salary thing, right? You send Jrue over there and you get back Jusuf Nurkic, who is bad. I'm not excited to play Jusuf Nurkic. This is clearly a penny pinching thing. If you read anything about Jrue Holiday trades, most of them are going to be like, whatever deal you make, the Celtics might have to attach something else to make it more feasible or more enticing for the other team that's going to do it. That's why a lot of these teams, like the Clippers, make sense because they're also in a similar financial bind. But any other team, you might be attaching like a late second round pick or something like that. But anyways, with Charlotte, you don't have to do that. You're just kind of being like, here, you take Jrue, we'll take some of your bad money. However, I did sneak in Tre Mann. Tre Mann, who I actually really like. If you're not familiar with Tre Mann, he's like a poor man's Derrick White, I would say. Really solid defensively, can run. You don't want him to be your starting point guard, but can run the offense. Occasionally gets hot from 3. I really like Tre Mann's game. He's really cheap too, but you needed to throw in a second player to make it work with the salary. So sending Jrue to Charlotte, getting back Jusuf Nurkic and Tre Mann. Now, as I finish that sentence, none of those feel good, right? None of those feel good. And it's just a reminder, like the real tough and difficult situation the Boston Celtics front office is in heading into this offseason. And some really tough decisions are going to have to be made. Unfortunate timing of the Tatum injury, of course, because they were in the midst of the Eastern Conference Finals, which somehow got extended another game because the Knicks showed up for the first time in a while in Game 5. But maybe this helps them rip the Band-Aid off on a couple of these. Tell me in the chat which one you hated the most, which one you liked the most, and then if there was another deal that I haven't touched upon. I've really tried to like scour the league to find teams that are interested, because it's got to be this like sweet spot of a team that's trying to win, that has cap flexibility, that's okay getting a little bit older, right? And in a lot of those situations, it's teams that are already spending a ton of money, so it's hard to bring in a $30 million player. And like they don't like the second apron and first apron, all of that stuff becomes very difficult. So I was proud of myself, though. We did a lot of these deals that did not include all of the Brooklyn Nets, right? Because a lot of these times it was Brooklyn Nets for days, and we didn't do that today. So proud of ourselves, pat on the back. But anyways, that's going to do it here for today in this episode of the Celtics Daily. Appreciate you all tuning in. Do me a favor, before you get on out of here, hit that little subscribe so you know the next time we're dropping some of that Celtics content. See you next time.